Anybody can push a shutter button. A 5-year-old can push a shutter button. A monkey with minimal training can push a shutter button. So if you think photography is about pushing a shutter button, well, you're going to have a very frustrating career. Because I grew up in a world where being a professional photographer meant one very specific thing. It didn't mean you owned a nice camera or that you had a fancy business card. And it didn't mean you made a little money with photography on the side. Right? It meant there were real consequences and you were responsible for them. And I'm talking about shooting commercially, like ad campaigns, catalog, agencies, editorial, corporate clients, real budgets, real expectations, real deadlines, the kind where if you miss one, it's not embarrassing, it's expensive. So I shot for Sears, Toys R Us, Eaton's, and when those catalogs had to go to press, the fines for missing a deadline could be $10,000 a day, sometimes thousands of dollars an hour. That was never a guideline or a suggestion. That was the reality you operated inside every single working day. That's what professional meant. And I know some people won't like this, but here it is. I admire Ansel Adams. Like, his zone system is brilliant. It's precise, reproducible. And if you love black and white landscape photography, yeah, what he did was incredible. It was extraordinary. He was a great artist. But we never considered Ansel Adams a professional photographer. He was a landscape photographer, an artist, a serious one, an important one. But an artist and a professional photographer are two completely different jobs. An artist answers to vision. A professional answers to a client, a deadline, a press date, and a budget. And neither is superior as a pursuit. I mean, they're not the same thing. And the line between them today, I find, has become so blurry that people entering this field don't even know which side they're standing on. Right? Today, anybody with a fancy camera and a social media account calls themselves a professional photographer. And if their income depends on it, yeah, I guess fine, technically. But is there a real deadline, a non-negotiable one? Is there a client whose campaign, whose catalog, whose print depends on you delivering today with no exceptions? Because that is a very different world. And that world has a way of clarifying itself really quickly. Right? Let me tell you what I mean by non-negotiable and what it actually looked like. Here's the situation that really stands out. I was shooting a fluorescent tube for a Canadian Tire ad. It was a newspaper ad. And shooting film, we had to shoot the film to match the size of the final ad. So this involved 11 by 14. Yeah, and that was the actual film size, 11 by 14 inches. So I was using a Deerdorf with bellows that extended close to 7 feet, which meant I was up on a ladder. And coming down the ladder, I slipped. One leg stayed up, the other one went down to the floor, and my right knee tore. It tore something. And I knew it instantly because I could taste iron in my mouth, and my tongue went numb, which was a really weird connection between the knee and the tongue. But anyway, it was just your body telling you something serious had just happened. And within seconds, my knee had swollen to the limit of my jeans. So I went to the studio manager and told him what happened. He looked at my shooting schedule and he looked at me and he said, yeah, you can drive yourself to Emerge as soon as you finish these shots. These deadlines have to be hit today. And so I finished the shots and then I drove myself to Emerge in my stick shift car at the time. Now, by today's standards, was that reasonable? Absolutely not. Would that happen in any studio today? No. Should it have happened then? Probably not. But that story just kind of tells you something important about the world that, I kind of came from. The deadline was more real than my injury. The client's press date was more real than my knee. And both the studio manager and I understood that without a single conversation about it. That was the culture. That was the air we breathed. That's what professional meant. And that's the part that's missing now. Right? It's like people think the camera makes the photographer, and it never does. Right? The pressure does. The standard does. The repetition does. The environment does. Being put in situations where there's no room for fantasy and no reward for excuses. That's what builds commercial shooters. Anybody can love photography when it's fun and there's no pressure and there's nothing at stake. Anybody can love cameras. Anybody can love lenses and gear and presets and whatever the trend is this week. That is never the test. So the real test is whether you can still do the job when the pressure is real. right? When the client's waiting, there's money on the line, and something has already gone wrong. And not that it always does, but it happens more often than you realize. And that's another thing nobody tells you. On a real commercial shoot, there's usually a problem. Sometimes 17 of them all running at once. And the photographer's job was never just to push the shutter button, right? The photographer's job primarily was to know exactly what the art director wanted before the shoot even started, to keep the set calm, to solve technical problems without anybody feeling the panic. And somewhere in the middle of all that, to make the picture. That's why I laugh now about the way some people talk about photography as if it begins and ends with the camera. The camera, for a large part, is the easiest part, and in many ways the least important. I mean, you need a camera. Which one is whichever one gets the job done, and in reality, whichever one you have on hand. Right? I'm not, to add to that, I'm not here to teach you photography. I genuinely can't. I've been doing this since I was 16 years old. Trying to explain how I do what I do is like asking a fish to explain how it swims. It doesn't even know it's swimming. It's just moving through the water. So what I can do is tell you what it was actually like. The big commercial studios, the catalog shoots, ad agencies, editorial, the film labs, which is something that doesn't exist anymore, but the people who stripped emulsion off 8x10 transparencies by hand using chemicals, that would probably get most workplaces banned today. So that whole world is basically gone now. And most of the people who built it are gone. I'm one of the few still here. And that's part of why I'm doing this channel. Not because the old days were better. In a lot of ways, they weren't. They were harsher, looser, and a lot less safe. But what they did do is it built a very specific kind of photographer. And almost nobody talks about that anymore. I've probably shot more film commercially than anyone still alive. And I don't mean that, I mean that literally, not as a bragging right? Most of my generation is gone, and most of the world we worked in is gone with them. So what I want to do here is simple. I really would like to share with you what the profession was actually about, what it demanded, what it paid, what it cost, what nobody taught you in school. Like I remember when I graduated in '82. That's a while ago. You went through the program, which was specifically for commercial photography. You came out, and it was like the best guarded secret on the planet. No photographer would share their secrets. That's the one thing you guarded, and it drove me crazy because I never saw it as a secret, and I still don't. There are no secrets. I mean, everyone has their own approach. So you can have, the secrets are actually irrelevant, so why not share them? Because how you would take the tools I share and how the next person takes it are two different things, and you always bring your own perception to that. And that's what makes a photographer the photographer. The shot you create is the culmination of all those things together that only you can bring to the table. And that's what clients are actually buying, right? Why a good shot was never just a pretty shot. A good shot was a shot that did the job for the client and made the client either successful, money, increased sales, conveyed a message, and it's unique to you. And that's a dance that you play with between you and the client. And photography is never about the camera. It's always about, at the end of the day, it's about light, your discipline, your eye. The standard you hold yourself to when nobody's watching and the deadline's real and your knee is the size of a grapefruit. And there's still shots on the schedule. What I'd like to do in this channel going forward is share what worked for me and how I learned to see light, how I thought through problems, how I handled clients and ran the business side of it. Just as one photographer finally opening a door on a profession that actually looked what it looked like from the inside. That's what this channel's about. So if you made it this far, thank you. I'm Ferdinand, and welcome to the wrong side of the camera.